First of all, I want to thank Colin and John for doing only jokes I've heard before so that we don't get into any trouble. This is my first literary honor. Comedy writing is not often part of this event, so I really appreciate the invitation. My literary life began in 5th grade in a public school in Toronto in the 1950s, when I volunteered to stay after school and work in the school library. I was given the task of gluing the envelopes to the back of the new books to hold the library cards. I only did it in the hope that I'd be the first to see the new Freddie the Pig book when it came in. Months later, one did come in, Freddie and the Men from Mars. That was when I first learned about patience. I stopped working right after that. It was spring in Canada and I could play outside. I was always attracted to comedy, and that's the way it was through high school and university. I wrote, or mostly co-wrote, and directed shows in high school and at the University of Toronto. What we did then was called satire, but it was mostly sketches and clever songs. Eventually, I began to write and perform with a partner, Hart Pomerantz, on radio and clubs, and then television, first in LA on NBC, then back to Canada for 3 years on the CBC, then back to LA on my own. Then New York in 1975 to do a live television show, which was once again sketches and jokes and music. Because we're here tonight at the Museum of Natural History, I thought, as I always do when I come into the museum, about where comedy and science intersect. And that's in the aptly called infinite monkey theorem. To refresh your memories, the theorem posits that if you locked a bunch of monkeys in a room with typewriters, given enough time, sooner or later, they would write Hamlet. There are two good jokes that come to mind whenever I think about the infinite monkey theorem. The first was a joke Dick Cavett did. He said he locked a bunch of monkeys in a room with typewriters and he left them alone. In a week or so, he looked in and none of them had written Hamlet, but 2 of them had written Valley of the Dolls. The other joke, which somehow has more meaning for me, was by a comedian named Stanley Myron Handelman. He also said that he locked a bunch of monkeys in a room with typewriters, and he looked in 3 or 4 days later and he said, "You know something? They were just fooling around." And I think when people think about people who write comedy, if they think about it at all, they think of them in a room with paper airplanes and typewriters just fooling around. And they're not entirely wrong. My entire career has been spent with people who write and perform comedy. And they're some of the most brilliant and sophisticated men and women I have ever known. And yet I think somehow people still connect comedy with monkeys and typewriters and just fooling around. Americans have a soft spot for monkeys. Think barrel of monkeys. When they go to a zoo, they first want to see the lion because the lion's majestic and king of the jungle. And later they want to see the bears because they're the fastest and the strongest. But then they want to see the monkeys because the monkeys are funny and you don't really know what they're going to do. And they kind of remind us of us, and occasionally one picks up and throws feces. In the world of show business, we are the monkeys, distant cousins to those who do important work. Having spent most of my career in and around these rooms with the men and women who create comedy, I appreciate above all else the intelligence involved. It's a room you want to be in. It has the slight whiff of freedom that you take in when you laugh. And it's a good sign when you do what I do, when you're in a room with people laughing, especially if the room is near a television studio. In the end, things are written down, are read aloud, choices are made, and then the show starts to move. But the beating heart of the show is in that room. Even Shakespeare knew he needed laughs. How else could you keep an audience there for hours for something important you wanted to say without laughs? I would not compare myself to Shakespeare, except in this one way. He had a cast of 10, a theater, and seats to fill. I want to thank PEN for most of all, for all you do to protect the freedom that writers need to work and allow myself and the other monkeys I work with to do what we do and keep fooling around. Thanks.